One of the biggest questions right now is what's going on with AI? It seems like a very broad and very boring question, but I think you bring a very fresh and different perspective. So let's start with that. What's going on in the world of AI right now, and what should people pay attention to?
Thank you. So my name is Henrik de Gyor, and I co-founded My AI Fluency. So myaifluency.com basically helps businesses adopt AI the right way. It's not necessarily just about speed. It's about relevancy. It's about clarity and having a vision, not only for a handful of individuals that might be wanting to try it, but actual relevant, clear use cases to build a vision and have those use cases that are relevant to each department or group, and potentially the entire company, so that you are not only on the forefront of things instead of the fear camp of things, but also adapting as it grows, because it's going to continue adapting every day.
So when you say individuals, do you mean Gen Z? Do you mean baby boomers? Do you mean millennials? Does the use of AI across generations differ, or is it congruent?
So to your point, it does differ to your exact point, and as you mentioned in your book as well, it differs for a variety of reasons. But the interesting thing is, it's really just two camps, regardless of generation. It's the fear camp, which is a large camp that just pays attention to the media and says, "Oh my gosh, the world's going to end. It's going to take away my job. The world and all the bad things that they hear in the narratives." That were propagated originally by Hollywood and other authors of fiction, because you have to have conflict in those books, otherwise no one reads them. And then there's the individuals, regardless of age, let's be honest, that are curious enough to try it, right, for their own purposes. And then they entertain the idea, hey, can I use this for my work at so and so company? And nowadays companies are either adopting it very, very slowly, or very, very rapidly, because it's a mandate that they have clear vision and they want to make sure that they're in the forefront of things, or they are limiting it because they're afraid of how their data is going to be used, the security of all the things that they have, whether they're e-com or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. There are, of course, privacy issues. There are, of course, cybersecurity issues, and those can be addressed. But it's really about adopting the tools that are going to be helpful for the individuals in question and the departments or roles that need to use this on a regular basis, to accelerate a lot of different things that they're doing very slowly, and monotonous garbage that they probably shouldn't be doing in the first place anymore.
Sure. So before we explore both avenues of curiosity and fear, we have to kind of ask a meta question of, does
Sure.
fear beget curiosity, or does curiosity beget fear?
I think you start with a camp of fear, because if you were curious, you would be scratching and pushing down the fear, because the ones who are willing to adopt it, let's take AI for example, they suppress their fear and go, what can this do for me, or how good is it, because I hear stories, but how is it relevant to me? And so they're suppressing that fear, right? There might be underlying fear, like the 10-20% of the possibilities of X, Y, and Z that everyone hears about on occasion, but it's really suppressing that fear and trying it out, and literally trying the free roles or free tools on your own, just to kick the tires, quite literally, and seeing how amazing it actually is, or not.
Right, and or not. And that's the thing is, if you have so much fear, you're not going to find out whether it's good or bad for you. What are some of the common, maybe let's say misconceptions that people have of AI that causes them to have this, maybe unproductive fear?
Mm-hmm. So they listen to too many stories, is unproductive, instead of trying it out themselves, right? So it's really about the user adoption of it. Like, either you're using it yourself and you're seeing how relevant it is, and you're iterating your responses. Like, you're iterating. So we're currently AI, as far as the ones that we saw in the last 3 years, growing very, very rapidly and iterating literally every day or every week, not every 6 months or every year anymore, is the tools in question that you can prompt something, and there's a number of them. There are thousands of them, right? Whether you're entering a text prompt or you're uploading a photo or you're asking for it to create a video or whatever that looks like, you're asking it to do certain things. And the way you ask that question is not like a Google search, right? To be clear. And the way you ask for it and the way you iterate saying, no, that's not good enough. Let's iterate what you've already created, or let's replace what you already created. And you have to keep iterating and keep changing, right? Your response and saying, no, you're close, but let's try this, or no, you're way off. Let's try again. And you have to be very, very clear on your response of framing what you're asking for. And that's different than a typical Google search, which is new, right? Again, back to the curiosity thing versus fear. So people are scared of change and new things until they actually try them and they see value in them.
You know, it's interesting that we're talking about the prompts because I used to be in the camp of, hey, generative AI is ruining critical thinking. But now with the way that you're phrasing it, it actually is not necessarily the case. Generative AI using these prompts can actually reinforce critical thinking because you have to really figure out what you're trying to ask, what conclusion you're trying to get to, because you can't structure healthy or productive prompts if you don't have that critical thinking.
Correct. Yeah, critical thinking is still going to be super important, regardless of how mature or immature AI is, and or how immature we are using it, for that matter. which is currently the challenge is we're not adapting to using it properly. And using it properly, regardless of age, whether you're in grade school, kindergarten, or college, or well beyond that, right, in the professional world, or even retirees, right, can use AI to their benefit.
What does curiosity look like? And it feels like a very boring question, or maybe not boring, but very silly question to ask. Why should we be curious about AI? But I think it really, like, asking someone like you would pinpoint certain markers that people maybe don't take into account. Why should we be curious of using artificial intelligence? Are people missing the point in some ways?
Yes. So to your point around curiosity, curiosity is really about learning, right? And not in the boring sense of school, because well beyond school, you need to continue learning because the world around us is still evolving, no matter how old or young we are. So things will continue to evolve. We need to be able to critically think and understand what's going on and compare and contrast things. And the curiosity is, well, what does this side and that side say? Like back to the fear and curiosity side, right? But like, are you curious enough to know why are people fearing it? Because they're not digging into it and they're just listening to stories versus trying it out. Why you have to ask the why and then dig into, well, let me try it for myself or see or talk to other people who have tried it and had success with it and things like that. And that's the critical thing is understanding is the key thing, right? Wanting to understand more and deeper levels, and that requires curiosity and critical thinking. To your point, if that helps understand.
No, it absolutely helps. And now the question becomes, what does fear and curiosity look like for the individual that differentiates fear and curiosity for a business?
Good question. So there's lots of fears in businesses. I've created a few, you as well, and the fears are very, very, let's say, there's a number of them, right? And some of them don't necessarily go away, right? It's really about understanding them and then being curious enough to go, okay, what am I missing? Whether it's skill or talent or hiring someone to figure this out for me, whether it's an account, let's pretend I'm terrible at accounting. I'm going to hire a CPA to do that. Or I'm terrible at coding. I'm going to hire a developer or a CTO or whatever to handle that for me. All the things, right, that require the skill set, you either acquire it yourself or learn enough to be dangerous and go, okay, I know enough to ask the right questions, right? And then pass it off to someone because I don't bring value to, let's say, podcast editing anymore. So I hand that off to someone. And then I automated it all. So I don't have to hand it off to anybody. So it's really about learning and then potentially automating or deleting things that are not relevant anymore. And that's what a lot of people are missing, to your point, is there's so many different things that don't need to be done by us anymore. And they're monotonous and bring zero value to our lives. But the end result is still needed to be done. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I do want to make it more transparent for people because these are new
Mhm.
concepts that people might be grappling with,
Sure.
and so it doesn't help if we're, if you and I are very familiar with it, but then people are still struggling
Sure.
with it.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, no offense with
Not at
that.
all.
So number one is one thing that I've considered and observed is that the line between individual and business in the realm of AI has become incredibly fuzzy
Mhm.
because now individuals are wondering, well, if a business is just using AI to produce a lot of
Mhm.
work, is that still quality work? What is your take on this?
That's a good question. So we all have our own standards per se, even if it's not clearly defined. And that definition is actually evolving as we see it because we're very close to seeing an enormous amount of content being created by AI. And I've written about this previously in a previous book and podcasts and blogs. And it's really is it the content that we want, or is it just going to be more robocalls? Is it going to be or more spam, the equivalency? It likely will become more spam, which is the lower quality that we're looking for. And then there's going to be also like previously in the last handful of years, pictures of people would have six fingers, right? And because the models weren't trained on hands, so they needed more training on that, the fact that hands have normally five fingers. And so it's really a matter of understanding what's the limitations on those things and then getting past those. So if it failed on your request to do X, like whatever the request is, and it's really limited to our own imagination, right? Because that's literally the limitation now is our imagination. We can imagine anything we want on the planet, and it can create text, images, video, songs, music, whatever you want, even translated for anything, which is just mind blowing on how much content can be created. But to your point, the quality of the content, like it doesn't sound like a robot anymore. Good. It's does it sound like a human or in the voice or the language or the accent that I want? Maybe that's debatable, right? And all the things that make content quality, right? What is like, is it misspelled, right? Like humans are still misspelling things, machines are too. So it's really a matter of uh, keeping the human in the loop for now and looking at the quality output of those machines. If machines are creating content, which they are and will continue to, very much so to create content at enormous scale compared to us slow humans, let's be honest. And you'll see more and more content and ads and movies and lots of other things that'll be created by AI. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a matter of is it being done at the quality that we're looking for? And if you can't tell, why does it matter? Because ultimately, it's a matter of it's still a matter of scale. So if an actor is going to pay getting paid for 100 movies a day because he's renting his avatar out and they can take 1,000 takes with his avatar, what's the issue? Now, there's been issues with the contracts around that, and Hollywood had lots of challenges with that, and they're trying to put the brakes on it. And but that I think it's partially fear based. Because there were some rumblings of like, well, we're going to scan extras and use them in perpetuity forever. I can understand if you're an extra and you want to be an actor someday. That's kind of suppressing your abilities to be an actor in the future. But there's so many more good options out there as far as the uses of it and learning how to use them properly.
Yeah, just double tapping on this extras point, it would be interesting how the job of being an extra changes because you can just generate people
Yes,
now. There's an infinity to generate
yes.
people, and so you could have people in the background that don't exist at all. So then everybody can become an actual main
Yes.
character in that way. That's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. One of the things when you're talking about does it matter that it's AI generated if you can't tell? The thing is, we can tell. And it's very, very frustrating as an individual to work with a business when that quality is absolutely, let's be honest,
Yes.
garbage
If it's
because
garbage, I
they're
totally
just,
agree with you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. because they're just double tapping, or they're just, tapping Chat
Yeah.
GPT or
And they're not filtering
Midjourney
it
or
after
something.
it comes out. They're just taking it. It's like the lazy student having it do its homework, right, and submitting it straight from GPT. And then, granted, ChatGPT has a specific format, and the teachers who are knowledgeable enough can recognize the format and go, "Uh-huh." So you just pump this out of ChatGPT. So there's two camps in schools too. It's like, let's limit it and say you're not allowed to. You have to handwrite everything. You have to do this and that and the other thing. You can't use AI. Versus, let's be honest, all students will be using AI at some point, whether we like it or not. Why don't we teach them how to use it properly rather than being lazy with it? Because it's not a tool for laziness, it's a tool for thinking. So we have to think on the output that we were actually desiring, and to your point, the quality that we're desiring, and up it, right? And teach it like this is what I'm looking for, not this garbage that it's producing today. Like if you're asking a terrible question or terribly phrased question, like a very simple, like write me a paper about Abraham Lincoln. You're just like, okay, yay, okay. So it'll prompt out whatever you want on that, and then it'll go, okay, hand in wrong. Yeah, you could do so much better, right? Like, okay, why don't we dig into like exactly what you want about Abraham Lincoln, and then specifically for the material that was in the question by said instructor. Yeah, I mean, honestly, instructors, professors, and teachers are using AI to create their syllabuses nowadays, and they should, right? Why not? So it's a matter of figuring out, okay, well, where's the sweet spot, and where does the human get in and the machine take place? Because they have to reinvent homework, because it's not about, oh, you're critically thinking to type in your question only, right? It has to be beyond that. Like, what are you actually trying to teach?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's so many ways we can cut that. So number one is that with artificial intelligence, in education, you can not just create one syllabus, but you can create many, many different syllabuses because the labor there is kind of negligible. And so you can start actually creating syllabuses that conform to the many different learning environments and standards rather than just one. So education becomes conformative rather than performative in a certain sense. Like students don't have to conform to education, education can conform to
100%.
them. That's number one. Number two is that when you're talking about laziness versus critical thinking or thinking, the actual problem is the curriculum
Mm-hmm.
itself, which we just again talked about. So now the curriculum can incentivize thinking rather than laziness because right now there's no incentive for a student to write an essay because that homework is boring and they can just ask Perplexity or ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or 17 other
Yep.
different tools to create that essay and they're good. Rather, there's a great book called The Runaway Species by David Eagleman, and he talks about like how to use education and education curriculums instead of just like, you learn about something and you write an essay on it, you learn about something and you apply that abstraction to something else. That can also be
Absolutely.
possible. So what I guess now the question is why are people not thinking in this way? Because it seems like there's so much opportunity, but somehow this is the fear and curiosity,
Yes, it
isn't it?
is. And it's also partially laziness on the systems, particularly the education systems that have been doing the same thing and rubber stamping it for X number of decades, right? It used to be like, let's create factory workers who just follow this standardized rubber stamping of education, right? And now it's still not focused on application. Like you will graduate from grade X and learn how to apply this information in the real world. Very rarely. It's mostly formation. It's mostly like the information about like they're requiring you to digest and consume information and regurgitate it onto a test or assessment of some sort, and then you're qualified to pass to next course or next grade, right? Which is not helpful in the application of the real world, right? It's like, okay, why am I learning this? How is this useful in the real world if I'm going to do engineering, medicine, work in construction, be a designer, whatever the your career path happens to be in the future or now, how is it applicable? And the education system hasn't done that. So it's really about changing the way we work. And using AI and our thinking rather than just using AI or just using ourselves and going, well, it's going to take me forever as usual to do XYZ tasks. It's like, no, it's like if you put it in the AI first mindset and go, okay, how can I use AI to benefit and do this task faster or better, more importantly, like do like ideation. I'm going to come up with 1,000 new ideas for this project. Okay, here's the brief I need to do, right? Whether it's homework or a new project acts at work, right? And I need 1,000 new ideas like in an hour. Okay, no problem. Do you like one of those 1,000 ideas? Great. Do you want to iterate on that? Great. That should take a few more minutes versus hours and
Right.
hours and days, right?
It reduces the time to really creative ideas if you can manage again the critical thinking to get to the
Mm-hmm.
creative idea. You know, one of the things that I think also differentiates the generations, which I would love your take on, is I was talking to my mother about report card comments. She's a high school teacher, and so her school board is, you know, kind of mandating using Copilot and generative
Okay.
AI in that case. And so I was telling her, you know, instead of just using it to write the entire report card comment, because she is one of the old school teachers who has a
Sure.
relationship with her students, you know, students remember her
Of
20
course.
years
Yeah.
later type of thing. I was just telling her, if you can just take the student and give the notes of like, hey, you know, Alicia was a great student. She always showed up on time, always raised her hand. It was a
Mm-hmm.
pleasure, you know, teaching her, and just give those notes to an AI, then the AI can create the
Yep.
paragraph and reduce the time from 5 minutes to 15,
Totally.
30
Yeah.
seconds, right? That's what I would do. And that's why I was
Yeah.
explaining it to her. But she enjoys the labor of writing the comment out because she feels like she has that connection. And that's what I'm interested and also not confused, but interested is the better word, is how do you explain to other generations that this isn't something that they should fear because it's taking away
Mhm.
connection, but it's actually just making their lives easier and in some cases
Right.
enhancing
So it's
connection?
actually enhancing connection because it's take away the monotonous stuff that you don't really need to do. Because like I was talking to an HR professional yesterday, and they were saying, okay, well, some businesses that they work with, they have to fill out paper forms, you know, like a dozen or 100 of them, depending on how complex the company is, uh, and write them out, you know, in triplicates, et cetera, and fill them out with a pen, you know, black pen, et cetera, bubbles, all the fun things, right? And do it over and over and over again rather than a form on a computer or a tablet and like check mark like yes 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 voice prompts like uh, how do you feel about this, why don't you just say what you actually want to say in the field and it'll say it and it'll transcribe for you instantly, like simple things like this, which are free tools for the most part, and or very inexpensive tools which we both use on a regular basis. Um, and then if you take away all that monotonous stuff that we don't really need to do and do it at a much faster rate, right? With digitization, not pens and pencils, uh, then you get to do it faster, more accurately, because then I don't have to try to read someone else's handwriting or mine for that matter, which is horrible because I type all day long. So exactly. So we could qualify as doctor handwritings. We know historically speaking, those are terrible. So, exactly. So if you take away all the monotonous stuff, then you have more time to have personal conversations and go, oh, great to see you. What have you been up to? What do you, if you're in HR, for example, it's like, oh, what, did you find this place okay? What do you, where did you come from originally? What are you aspiring to do here? Et cetera, all the things, right? And have meaningful conversations, regardless of age, right? Or you can text each other if that's the age range that you're in, text to each other, and go LOL is all the fun things, right? And share emojis, and have more meaningful conversations than using a pen and pencil and writing squirrely things that barely anyone can write or read. And go, I wish that looks like a really meaningful thing, but I can't read the squirrely handwriting because they don't teach cursive anymore.
So artificial intelligence at the surface level, or sorry, maybe not at the surface level, AI used very loosely can degrade connection, but when you actually do some critical thinking on how to use AI, it can enhance connection. And it's just about figuring out how to use that critical thinking in integrating AI to
Correct.
enhance connection. So one of the other things before we get to this next kind of segue, but there's an insecurity with businesses right now that they don't know how to be valuable in the age of artificial intelligence. Because as an individual, I kind of have access to a lot of free tools and make those businesses redundant or useless. How does a business deal with this conundrum?
Well, they have to explore like what tools will be helpful for them, and if they're actually truly redundant, they have to actually look at their business cases again, right? If they're doing the equivalency of typewriter repair people, right? There's not that many typewriters to repair anymore, right? No one really shed a tear for the typewriter repair people anymore. No one really shed a tear for, oh, we don't need horses to go from city X to city Y anymore. And the horses probably love it too, right? No one fears like, oh, I don't know if we're going to have a 50% chance of dying in that plane, like the early days of flight, right? Those days are over. It's just an evolutionary step, right? Of learning to use this tool, just like we learned how to use computers a while back, just like we learned how to use mobile phones after payphones, right? We like I know that some people don't even know what a payphone looks like because they barely exist, right? Yeah, or rotary phones. I'm not even go with that. I'm going to go there. It's like
I have no clue
you
how
don't
those
need
even
to.
work
They're
until like
so irrelevant.
until and then. Yep.
so
Yep.
so like there's things that are evolving, right? And AI is one of those things, right? Just like mobile phones, just like computers, just like the things that we don't use anymore. Some people still want to use those tools. Some people still want to use a pen where you have to suck the ink in and writes with beautiful calligraphy and things like that. Great, no problem. They don't really teach much calligraphy anymore, right? So it's really a matter of back to your point around businesses is evaluating what tools will be helpful for them, whether they're doing construction, whether they're doing building paper clips, or they're building whatever they're building, right? Physical products or services, right? And understanding how can it help them and how can it help potentially do things better, faster, cheaper, all the things that most businesses really usually want to do, but it involves wanting to change. And if they don't want to change anything, then they may become redundant, like the Blockbusters of the world, like the Kodaks of the world, like all the companies that are famously known for, well, we invented digital photography, but we're going to continue using film. And then, well, we know how many people use film nowadays, aside from artists. I was a photographer, I know. We know how many people use typewriters. Yes, there are a few, not I. We know how many people are using horses, not to get around much, but some societies do still use horses to get around, but they don't go very far with them for obvious reasons, right? Because it would be dangerous for the horse and them. All the things that they have to realize that there's an evolutionary step, and AI is one of those.
What if I'm just going to offer some strange pushback, but what if I don't want to update because I feel like the world is moving too quickly? Like, I didn't ask for this. I'm a graphics designer. I spent 10 years between 2010 and 2020 learning my craft. I'm a really good graphics designer, but now my work is basically gone because people are just going to ChatGPT and getting really trashy work from ChatGPT. Like the quality is incomparable, but people are still going for the low quality stuff, even though my prices are
Right.
not that substantial. How do I deal with this as an
So, as an
individual?
individual, you can use it to iterate, you can use it to ideate. Right. So you have to come up with an idea, first of all, like a new logo, for example. So, new logo design, right? An AI can create those logo designs, and then you can iterate it to be far, far, far better as a human, right? Because you have imagination. The machines just regurgitate a lot of different things that have been fed to them. So I was working with a different association recently, which wanted to redo their logo. And so I fed it all the parameters that I wanted into AI, and I had multiple different AIs pumping out a logo, not mine, but a different one. And uh, we had a number of iterations. Some of them looked great. A lot of them were trash, to be perfectly honest, to your exact point. And then we had the humans vote on it. And most of the people didn't really like most of them. So we said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and let's hire humans. So we hired humans. We vetted three humans. One didn't want to work nicely with us. They were like, "Here's one design. Have a nice day. Goodbye." Like, okay, that's not exactly collaboration by today's standards. So no, thank you. Goodbye. Next. Then there was another one. It's like, okay, what does your current logo look like? Okay, I'll iterate that by a tiny fraction. It's like, okay, no, thank you. We can do better than that by today's standard or any standard. and then and then there's the to your point around collaboration. There's like, we will do as many designs as you want and iterate it as many times as you need to, which just like machines will, but we're going to iterate them and go, okay, you didn't like the colors on this one. How about this? You didn't like this scrolly thing over here. No problem. You didn't like the how we shaped a certain letter. No problem. We can change that. And then after about 3 rounds, we had a beautiful logo that everyone loved. And it's really about the iteration and the collaboration. And you can collaborate with a machine. You can collaborate with a human. You can collaborate with both, right? And say, here's some examples of what I like, right? And say, I kind of like the feature of this thing and I kind of like the feature of that thing. Can you combine them? Because the machine's not doing it well. And then you can involve the human in the loop again to do it better. But it involves collaboration, it involves critical thinking or thinking, and it involves creativity in that point around the design, which is exactly why they're doing the job, is to be creative and output something for their business and to benefit the end user of whoever, whatever they're creating. Fair?
So the answer to this question is kind of obvious, given that you created a business to solve the problem, and nobody creates a business in order to, nobody creates a business to for a problem that's already solved. So it's kind of obvious. But what is the purpose of my AI fluency? And to my previous point, do people think along the lines that you were just on in the sense of using artificial intelligence for creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and iteration? Are businesses already there, or
There's a
is there
huge
some
amount of
hesitancy with
hesitancy.
them?
So there's still very much in the fear camp. Interestingly enough, the creatives are very much in the fear camp because, to your exact point, they're thinking it's going to take away my job. They're just going to buy cheaper iterations of something that I could design far better, and they're not willing to iterate. They're not willing to understand how the tool works today versus tomorrow, versus seeing like, okay, can I iterate faster? Can I produce more faster and better, potentially speaking? Where if I need 1,000 logo ideas or 1,000 different taglines, for example, for a brand, why use my brain like significantly for the next like 5 days versus like have something create 10,000 of them in the next few minutes, right? It's like, and then you basically do critical thinking and go, I read the 10,000 and I liked four, right? And then go, okay, let me iterate those four and go, okay, this is the simplicity of what the message should be for that tagline, and go and do that. But regarding my AI fluency helps businesses, uh, small, medium, large. Doesn't really matter what the industry is, technically speaking, because AI can help just about anybody, even if they are a solopreneur or they have hundreds of thousands of employees. And it doesn't really matter what language they're using either, because it can help them to do that too. And it can translate everything that it does. So it's a matter of understanding the tools. And it starts with a vision, right? And that's what most companies are missing, is the vision of how is it going to help our company, not necessarily just in speed or iteration or collaboration, but also like all the things that they are completely missing because they haven't bothered to use the tools themselves even if they're isolated outside of their ecosystem or using their data, which some companies do. The financial firms use them, but they're isolated completely because their data is very, very important to them. So it's completely locked down to their company only. And you're not allowed to use the personal tools that you might use at home. And that's okay, as long as you tell your employees this. Because if you don't use Copilot the right way, it somebody in the company or at the school for that matter can say, how much does the principal make? And it'll just reach into HR and grab that information and show it to you, which is not what you want in a company because that breeds lots of negative feelings and all that fun stuff. So it's a matter of using it properly, using it securely, right? And using it so that it's relevant, clear, and brings value to people. And if it does that, then it's a benefit. But it shouldn't cost them millions of dollars either.
It shouldn't cost them millions of dollars, but there's also, it's not just the financial or technical point, there's also a social and maybe even
Sure.
socio-political aspect to it. How do we deal with that? Because if I'm a manager, I obviously want artificial intelligence, but if I'm a manager, I'm also thinking, does this replace my job as well? Like, is there an incentive for,
Mhm.
at the start of the Dark Knight, and all the robbers are there, and slowly but surely, as soon as their job is done, the other one, takes them out. Is AI kind of like that, where managers are like, hey, let me use ChatGPT or some type of generative AI, but at the same time, what if this automates my job as well? So the manager above me can just use generative AI to automate
So
me.
the way businesses typically work is leaders determine what they need to do, and then the managers tell the employees and assign them stuff. And they're part of the what the managers need to do is arm the employees with the tools to do that work, right? Not only just here's the thing I need you to do, task A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but also here's the tools that you need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and and they may tell them how to do that with the tools A, B, C, and D, and those tools might be AI. And eventually, they will be AI, whether we like it or not, because pretty much every tool is involving AI and more, pretty much every single day, and it's going to be even more prevalent as we go along. So it's the managers need to figure out which tools are they A, allowed to use, and B, can do the job properly, right? Versus like having every employee try every single tool under the sun to do whatever they're trying to do, which isn't very wise and sounds like a complete waste of time if you were to do that. So rather than having everyone use their own, like bring your own AI, like BYO AI, you don't want that situation because that's a cluster. So avoid that and have the accepted tools within their accepted environments that have been properly vetted and that can do and be helpful, be relevant, be clear, be useful, and output the quality of for that task that they're trying to do, whatever the task is, or improve it. Like if you can do it like 10 times faster or 100 times faster, people will be happy because, granted, you will get more tasks.
It's one of those problems I also see as a manager if half of my employees are human and half of them are agents. Is that also a concern for people? Because now, as an employee, my coworkers are agents, but I'm also using an agent. So how valuable am I? How valuable is the human in the loop at this point? And if we subscribe to the, I guess, ideology that this is the worst that AI is going to be, what does that life cycle of the human in the loop look like? When does it become
Right. So
not a
if you
human
ever
in the
seen the
loop?
movie Wall-E, it's WALLE. It's a Pixar movie. It's fantastic. It kind of shows that future per se, a potential future where those tools are doing more and more for us, right? The agents are going to do more and more for us. They're going to get better and better. Yes, you will likely have machines or robots or whatever doing that. In the very, very near future, you're going to have text to action, meaning book that vacation, but not just plan the vacation, but book that vacation. Or or schedule all the things that I need to schedule rather than so that the agents will be doing a lot more for us rather than giving you text or giving you an image or giving you video or giving you some kind of output that you still have to go from tool A to tool B to do something with, whether it's on your whatever device you happen to be using it on. So the yes, we will likely have more agents. They'll likely do more and more for us, and it's a matter of are we doing the critical thinking, or is it going to be doing the critical thinking for us? Likely less so, and then is it going to do it at the standard that we want? Because if we have standards, right? Let's just say quality standards, design standards, whatever, right? Whatever those are, or we need to develop them and understand what those are going to be. But yes, over time, we're going to get potentially less human employees and more agents to do that work because the humans won't be needed to do that kind of work. And then humans will be free to do other things that they want to.
So now we come to a very interesting conversation of
Mm-hmm.
work and also meaningful work. Because I really don't want to be hired as a software developer if I was having this conversation last time, but I don't want to be hired as a software developer if my entire job is looking over an AI's code. And as you and I both know, as an AI produces more and more code, it becomes more and more incomprehensible to humans. It becomes very, very legible and comprehensible to other AIs, but as a human, it's
Sure.
very, very difficult to sift through that code. And the answer isn't hiring more developers, it's actually, in a sense, getting rid of more
Mm-hmm.
developers because it's non meaningful work. But in that transitional state, how do businesses adapt and adopt that philosophy? How do you onboard them into thinking, hey, maybe you create other jobs that are more meaningful to humans? And what do those jobs look like, if I
Sure.
can ask
So
you a very difficult question?
meaningfulness matters and is defined by different people, right? How what you like to do versus what I like to do, and what everyone else likes to do are different things. And it's based on our skill set. It's based on our creativity. It's based on our curiosity. It's based on a lot of different things, right? What we're motivated to do, what we're paid to do, what we learn to do, what we want to learn to do, all the things, right? And it's a matter of figuring out, well, what is going to be meaningful for me now versus in a year versus 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And that is going to evolve. And we will have to evolve with that. Otherwise, we may become more and more irrelevant to it. Because to your point, if AI is building code, like if AI is building code for a landing page or a login page, logins, not that super important. It's been built before a few times, right? No one really cares about that code except for what it might look like, UI wise, UX wise. Like yeah, sure, okay, yeah, it needs to work. That's great, fantastic, it works, awesome. Next, unless the designer says otherwise, don't really care. Particularly if you're an engineer most of the time. If you're a designer, you care a lot about that, how thick that line is, or what the logo looks like, or what exact color is being used. That's fine. That's your job. No problem. Granted, a machine can do that too.
How many pixels to the left
Yeah.
is this
Well,
logo? It
why
needs
don't
to
we
be
have the
7
AI
more
measure it?
pixels to the left. It's like, okay.
So it's a matter of, do you want a human to do it slowly, or do you want a machine to do it better in theory, or just do it faster? It's doing it definitely faster. Is it doing it better? That's debatable. Sometimes it's trash. Let's be honest. And it's really, is it functioning? Is it operating? Is it buggy? How buggy is it? Because every software is buggy. Let's be honest. There's no like perfect code that doesn't exist. I'm sorry. Never will, likely, right? Because things will evolve, and then there's like, oh, look, a 0 day, yay!
Oh yeah. So okay, can we double tap on that? How should companies react to these cybersecurity threats? Because I have read a lot about
Mhm,
LLMs creating 0 days in that way and creating cybersecurity
mhm.
vulnerabilities. Should businesses be worried about this, or is it kind of just like, hey, if we use AI as the offender, we can use AI as the
Yeah, but
defender?
so I wrote about that as well. So the defensive part is always slower than the offensive part. That's the sad reality. So So it's just like finding deep fakes or whatever. The deep fake will evolve faster than the detection of it, right? Or of the 0 day detection. Like there's a lot of different security, and I spoke to a penetration testing professional about this. Is like, and he knows that his job will eventually be taken over by an AI in the near future. And he's okay with that, but right now he's having a lot of fun, defending, XYZ companies from state actors. And that's what, meaningful work that he does today. And he knows that it likely his work is going to be trained on how to do that, and then he can focus on other things, potentially speaking, right? So it's really the willingness to evolve, the willingness to change, the willingness to think critically and go, okay, what's the advantage of penetrating the system? Thinking literally like, you know, I'm going to say the devil versus the angel, right? Like taking all perspectives and going, what's the good and the bad and the in betweens of those scenarios. And that some companies literally hire people that are across the spectrum of introvert to extrovert, across all the, I'm going to say the MBTIs, all 16. They want all 16 personalities in the room and throw an idea at them and go, what are your thoughts on this? So they have 16 different potential responses to this, potentially at different age ranges as well, and going, okay, how do you see this problem? What's the positives and the negatives, the pros and cons, right? All the things, and understanding, okay, why would you do this if you were nefarious? Why would you do this if you're trying to benefit from it? Granted, both sides are trying to benefit from it for one way or another, but you have to take that perspective. And most people aren't. Most people are looking with their blinders on most of the time, and they are not thinking critically on all the different possible scenarios, which AI can help too as well. But it's really a matter of understanding your field very, very, very well, and understanding, will AI replace me or just augment me? Right now, it's AI plus me, right? Or AI plus you, for the lack of a better term. It's not AI or me yet. Mhm. Yes. Well, eventually it will likely be, but not anytime soon, I would say. Probably not, I'm going to say not even necessarily this decade, for some jobs. Um, I think it's a matter of using it for as a tool, just like you use whatever you're writing with, right? It's like, okay, how do you write with a pen? How do you write with okay, you need a pen and then something to write it on. How do you write on a computer? Well, there's usually a keyboard or some kind of touch device for this problem, right? It's like you need to understand like the interfaces of it, and you need to understand why you're using this tool. And once you understand why you're using this tool, because you want to do it faster, you want to do it better, you want to improve. If you don't want to improve, why are you doing this? Right? It's like that's a question, because there are people who do a job because they just are paid to not do it well. Why should those people continue being working?
That's going on in Google right now. They're hiring people that are just sitting stagnant. You know, it is interesting that you bring up it's not going to happen this decade for some jobs. How do you figure out if you're in that job or not?
So if it's a very repeatable templated process, your job is at risk.
How do you know if it's repeatable or templative? Because people like to get
Sure.
defensive and say, no, that's not me.
Right, right. So if you use forms, right, like a lawyer or a paralegal, right, do you use forms as a tax attorney? And now, granted, the tax laws change all day long, and granted, an AI can track those things much better than a human can across all states or all countries, right? Um, those are at risk to a degree. Completely? No, because there will be nuances. And then some lawyers are just salivating on the fact that there will be lawsuits. And they're like, yay, please use AI more. Because then I can sue someone. I don't know who, but maybe they'll be this country. Not likely, but that's a different issue. so so it's like the copyright infringement things where yes, some AI authoring companies are blatantly stealing stuff from a variety of sources. That's known, and there are lawsuits around that. The challenge is the way the copyright law was written is if you iterate it, it's now a new thing. And just like certain other previous cases, they'll probably win. The authoring companies will probably win that case, especially with the lobbies that are pushing AI. So if you're trying to fight the copyright thing, whether you're a creator or an author or whatever you're creating and trying to copyright, hypothetically speaking, you don't have much of a chance, sadly, unless they change the copyright law significantly, and they haven't since the 70s. So not likely going to happen much. Um, things will evolve, and you have to be willing to evolve with them, and you have to be willing to improve with those tools. And if your job becomes redundant for the sake of argument, you have to retrain. It's going to be that simple, and retrain to something that's meaningful for you or needed again for said market, hopefully for a longer period than what last time, right? It's just a matter of evolution. It's an evolutionary step, and we don't have much to basically choose. It's not a choice anymore.
So,
Um,
as one of the last questions for this topic, I do want to ask you. So, my friend Christine Blanchette runs a job search class, and she helps people, with finding a job. What advice do you have for them? Since it's such a tough market and things are changing so much, how do they find meaning, and how do they progress and advance and adapt and adopt artificial to and with artificial intelligence?
well, it's really about trying the tools that are meaningful to them, right? They're like, I've heard lots of things about this, and it might do something for me or my work or what I want to do. Even personal projects, right? Personal projects, hobbies, whatever, right? It might help you with this, and that's how you kick the tires on it on a personal level. Whether applying for jobs, yes, you can apply for a job by taking the job description from said website and sticking in your resume and saying, rewrite my resume for this job based on what you see, and then rewrite a cover letter. So I'm not spending 3 days writing a beautiful cover letter and beautiful resume that's relevant to that job, and then hoping and praying. But granted, you have to iterate it because it's going to come out with the format of said tool, and it's really really obvious, and they'll have very very specific characters that are only coming out of that tool on a regular basis. So you have to modify it, human in the loop, still for now, to get that potential to apply. And granted, lots of companies are ghosting you all day long if you apply for companies for whatever job. There's 100 to thousands. Actually, there was a case very recently. Microsoft had, I think it was in 4 to 9 brand new shiny developer positions, right? Entry level developer positions. And they posted the position because they had to, and they got 100,000 resumes in 24 hours. Okay. What do you do with 100,000 resumes? Okay, it's a very simple answer. They ignored them all. Why? Because they went with the people that did really well in their internship last summer, and they hired the best of those. So still a human in the loop, right? It's not about an AI sucking all those 100,000 resumes and going, find me the best candidates. Down to 1,000. Yay. It's like, I talked to a Silicon Valley company, and they were interviewing me for a role, which I totally declined. And they interviewed me, and it was like, I was like, oh, how? And I asked them, like, oh, when do you expect to make your decisions? Like, oh, well, we still need to go through a few more candidates. I was like, oh, how many candidates are you looking at? 250. And I was like, uh huh, okay, yeah, I won't wait. I was like, really? You're gonna call each human and hope and pray that you schedule a call with them to do what? To vet 250 people? But there's a little nuanced trick to their thing. They wanted feedback on the company, and they wanted feedback on the role. So they were learning at the same time. So it wasn't really about filling the job, wink, wink, nod, nod. It was about like learning what's the perception of our company. So little hidden meaning there. Mm-hmm.
The games that companies play right now. You know, it's. I'm gonna ask you a kind of an abstract question, which I hope you will tolerate. But how do you stay mentally healthy in this job market with AI? Because it
Mm-hmm.
feels so depressing. You're getting ghosted constantly. Even putting my resume into ChatGPT and having it iterate on it, it's just like
Mm-hmm. It is. It
it's
is.
like dreary and annoying and
Right.
frustrating. And like I don't want to do this constantly. And my resume looks like everybody else's.
Honestly,
Where do I
I
go
stopped
with
submitting my
this?
resume a long time ago. I wait for recruiters to call me. So I make myself very, very, very visible. So I have a podcast or a few. I have books or a few. I have content that I put out on social media or a bunch, like yourself, right? And you make yourself visible and you make yourself known for this or that or the other thing that you have an interest in, that you want to pursue more of, that you value, that is meaningful to you, and you want to learn more. So you interview people, intent, and to learn those perspectives from other people and collaborate with them. And then once you have those, you make sure that's reflected on whatever wherever your job posting information is, whether you're getting contracts, jobs, whatever that looks like, and are open for them or not, right? And those that's a toggle on some places like LinkedIn, Dice, Indeed, wherever you're posting, right? For said jobs, associations, all the things, right? And then figuring out, okay, you're gonna get calls on an occasional basis, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes seasonally, depends on the market. Let's be honest, and when those opportunities open up, and then it's a matter of, okay, well, what's your criteria for work? Right. So I have 5 criteria for work. I put them in a blog post, which I'm happy to share with you. It's like, okay, the criteria to me is very clear. What I'm looking for is like, are they listening to me? Can I make a difference? Are they paying well? Are they treating me well? Things like that, right? That are matter to me because some employers don't care about those things for a variety of reasons. And it's a matter of knowing what are your standards. So if you make those standards very clear, it's very easy to like, okay, I got an offer or I got a job description that they want me to like submit my resume to, or there's a contract like they want an RFP for this and that and the other thing. It's like, okay, is this worth my time? Are they willing to pay whatever? Or, having a brief conversation with recruiter X or headhunter Y or company Z or whatever, and figuring out what those are, and continuing to put out content that's meaningful to you about things that you want to learn more of, and being visible. So if you're visible and adaptable and flexible and willing to collaborate, you will have opportunities. A lot of them will be garbage, but you have to vet them based on your standards. Does that help?
In the age of AI, you have to rely on connection with other humans rather than just a numbers game on LinkedIn or Indeed or anything like that. What advice do you have for individuals and businesses in the age of artificial intelligence? If you could just say maybe one thing that wraps up this conversation nicely.
I would say connect with people. To your point, reach out when you connect with someone on LinkedIn. What I do instead of just connect and forget that they exist, like which is very easy to do, or whatever network you're on, it's a matter of sending a message. So like, oh, happy to have a conversation. Here's my Calendly link. Here's for my availability. So my Calendly is available for the next 30 days. You can see what times I'm available. You can connect any of those times that are work for your schedule. And if you care to speak with me about X, Y, or Z, which I can make available to you as well, and connect that way, or email me and figure out, like, oh, I want to send you a message about X. No problem. So it's really about connection to your exact point. It's not just about accumulating the number of connections, it's about actually making connections and sharing that message, sharing what you actually care about, sharing about what's meaningful to you or not meaningful to you, or what you want change, or what you think is important or not important, and then making that clearer to other people.
Sure. Let's go to the abstract questions to finish off this episode. If you had a magic wand and you could solve one problem in the world, what would it be and why?
Fear. If you remove fear, what can you accomplish?
And what gives you hope in the world?
Other people's connections because they care to connect.
I love it. Henrik, this was a great conversation. It feels like we sprinted, but we covered so much ground. Where can we find you online?
So I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Henrik de Gyor. It's Henrik space DE space GYOR. You can find me on henrikdegyor.com as well. You can find me at AIFluency.com, which is one of my businesses. Also, other businesses that you can find on my LinkedIn profile. And welcome the conversation and the connection.
Yep. I will include everything in the show notes. Henrik, thank you so much for this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ayush.